There's a specific kind of panic that comes from hearing a door open when you thought you had at least another hour alone, and I want to start there, because that's genuinely where this whole thing begins for me, not with some big meaningful realization, just with my heart slamming into my ribs because Theo came home 4 hours earlier than his shift was supposed to end. I was sitting cross-legged on the couch with my laptop, watching a video I'd found at 2 in the morning about a month earlier and had been quietly rewatching ever since. Not porn, not anything like that, a video from a guy's channel where he just talked, calm and plain, about the year he came out to his family, the year his college roommate became his first boyfriend, the years after that. It sounds simple written out like that. It didn't feel simple watching it. It felt like somebody had reached into a part of my chest I'd kept locked for 26 years and just quietly turned the light on. I heard Theo's key in the door, and I did the dumbest possible thing, which was panic slam the laptop shut instead of just closing the tab like a normal person with functioning motor skills. Hey, I got off early. The register was doing that thing again, so they sent. He stopped in the doorway, keys still in his hand, looking at me sitting there with my laptop clutched to my chest like it contained state secrets. You good? Yep, totally good, just watching something. Okay, he drew the word out, clearly not buying it, towing off his shoes by the door the way he always did, dropping his keys in the bowl we kept for exactly that purpose. You look like you just got caught doing a crime. I did not just get caught doing a crime. You're sitting like you're protecting a nuclear launch code. I laughed too high too fast, and set the laptop down on the coffee table like it wasn't a big deal, like my hands weren't slightly unsteady doing it. Theo and I had been roommates for a year and a half by then, ever since a mutual friend from work put us in touch when I needed somewhere to live in a hurry. We'd built an easy kind of friendship in that time, the kind built on shared grocery runs and arguing about whose turn it was to take the trash out, and him teaching me how to make his mom's pasta sauce because I'd apparently been buying jarred sauce like a criminal my whole adult life. It was easy, comfortable. I liked our life together in a way I hadn't examined too closely, because examining it too closely felt like it might lead somewhere I wasn't ready to go. He went to the kitchen, and I thought that was the end of it, thought I'd successfully dodged whatever this was about to become. Then I heard the fridge close, and his footsteps came back into the living room, instead of continuing down the hall to his own room, and he sat down on the other end of the couch, close enough that I felt the cushion shift under his weight. So what were you actually watching? He said, not in an accusing way, just curious low, like he was giving me an easy out if I wanted it. Nothing important. You don't slam a laptop shut over nothing important. I slam my laptop shut when I'm looking at my bank account. You slammed yours like I'd walked in on something. I could feel my face doing something complicated, heat crawling up the back of my neck. I've never been good at lying to Theo specifically, which is a strange thing to notice about a person, that they've got some kind of built-in lie detector installed in your chest that goes off whenever you try to feed them something false. I sat there for a second, weighing it, and then I don't know. I got tired. Tired of holding a version of myself up that wasn't the real one. Tired in the specific way you get after doing something for so long it stops even feeling like effort and just feels like your permanent shape. It was a coming out video, I said. This guy's channel, I've been watching it for like a month. Theo didn't say anything right away, and the quiet stretched out long enough that I started cataloging every possible way this could go, my brain doing the thing it always did in moments like that, running through outcomes at high speed like it was trying to prepare me for the worst one before it happened. Okay, he finally said. Can I ask why you were watching it, or is that too on the nose? It's fine, you can ask. I picked at a loose thread on the couch cushion, needing somewhere to put my hands. I think I've known something about myself for a really long time and just never said it to anyone. Not even really to myself, if that makes sense. Like I knew it in the way you know a room has a door in it even when the lights are off. I just never walked over and opened it. And the video helped you get closer to the door. Something like that. It's stupid, watching some strangers coming out story on repeat like it's gonna teach me how to do mine. It's not stupid. He said it fast, almost too fast, like he wanted to make sure I heard it before I could talk myself out of believing it. I don't think that's stupid at all. I looked over at him then, actually looked, and something about his face had changed, not shocked, not uncomfortable, something softer and more complicated than either of those. He was looking at his hands at the coffee table, anywhere but directly at me, which for Theo was unusual. He's a guy who holds eye contact easily, who doesn't fidget much, who I'd always thought of as pretty unflappable. Watching him look everywhere except at me told me something was happening on his end too, something I didn't have a name for yet. Can I say something? He said, and you have to actually let me finish before you react. because if I don't get it all out, I don't think I'll say it at all. My stomach did something complicated. Okay. I've had a girlfriend, and before that I dated a few women in college, and none of that was fake. I want to say that first. None of it was me performing something I didn't feel. He was talking fast now, like he'd rehearsed this in his head 100 times without ever expecting to actually say it out loud. But there's also just been this other thing sitting underneath all of it that I never really looked at directly, because it felt easier not to, because everything else about my life was already working, you know. Why go poke at the one thing that might make it complicated? And then I moved in with you a year and a half ago, and it got a lot harder to keep not looking at it. I sat very still, because I genuinely didn't trust my voice not to do something embarrassing if I tried to use it right then. I'm not saying this well, he said, running a hand through his hair. I guess what I'm saying is, I walked in today and saw you looking like you'd been caught doing something you were ashamed of, and it made me so upset, actually properly upset, because I didn't want you to feel like that in your own home. In our home, over something that isn't shameful at all. And then somewhere in the last 2 minutes of talking to you about it, I realized I was also kind of talking about myself. Theo. I know this is a lot. I know I'm dumping this on you right after you just told me something huge about yourself, which is a terrible time to also make it about me. I'm aware of that. I didn't know when else I was gonna say it if I didn't say it right now while the door was already open. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding, something between a laugh and something shakier than a laugh. You're allowed to have your own door too, you know. This doesn't have to just be about mine. Well, he finally looked at me, and there was something raw in his face, something I'd never seen on him before, not in a year and a half of watching him be steady through every ordinary crisis our shared life had thrown at us: broken pipes, late rent, a bad week at his job that he never fully explained. I've thought about you, more than I probably should have, living with you, sharing a bathroom with you, watching you make terrible coffee every morning and drink it anyway out of stubbornness. I've thought about you in a way that I kept telling myself was just, I don't know, appreciation for a good roommate. And I don't actually think that's what it was. The room felt very small and very quiet all of a sudden. I could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen, some car passing outside, my own pulse doing something erratic in my ears. I don't know what to do with that information right now, I admitted, because it felt more honest than pretending I had some smooth response ready. Not because it's bad, because I've spent the last month working up the nerve to admit something to myself in private, and now you're telling me something that makes the whole thing feel a lot bigger and a lot faster than I was ready for. That's fair. I'm not trying to rush you into anything, I promise. I just didn't want to sit on it anymore after you'd just been that honest with me. It felt wrong to let you be brave alone in the room. That line stuck in me somewhere soft. Let you be brave alone in the room. I turned it over a few times, and something about it made the fear in my chest loosen just slightly, enough room to actually breathe around it. Can we not figure out what any of this means tonight? I asked. Like, can we just sit with it, both of us, without deciding what happens next right this second? Yeah, of course, we don't have to decide anything tonight. He hesitated, then added quieter, almost shy in a way that didn't fit the confident, steady person I'd lived with for a year and a half. Can I sit closer, though? Not for anything, just because I don't really want to be on the opposite end of the couch right now. I nodded, and he shifted closer, close enough that our shoulders were almost touching. And we sat like that for a long time without talking, the TV off, the laptop closed on the coffee table, both of us just breathing in the same quiet room, letting something reshape itself between us without either of us forcing it into words it wasn't ready to hold yet. The next few days were strange in a way I don't fully have language for. Not bad strange, just recalibrated. We'd fall into old patterns, arguing about the dishes, splitting a pizza on the couch, and then there'd be these moments where the air between us would go thick and neither of us would say anything about it. Both of us just letting it sit there, unresolved, present. I caught him looking at me once while I was making coffee, a look I couldn't quite name, and when I met his eyes, he didn't look away fast the way people usually do when they're caught staring. He just held it, a small smile at the corner of his mouth, like he wasn't sorry at all. About a week later, I finally told my sister, my first time saying it to anyone outside that living room, and I called Theo right after, mostly because I needed someone to know it had happened, and mostly because some part of me had already started orienting my life around him being the person I told things to first. How'd it go? He asked. She cried a little, good crying, said she'd wondered for a while and didn't want to push before I was ready. I sat down on my bed, phone against my ear, even though he was 30 feet away down the hall, which in hindsight was a slightly ridiculous way to have that conversation. I don't know why I called you instead of just walking over and telling you in person. Maybe some part of you wanted a minute where it was just words, before you had to watch my face do something about it. That's annoyingly perceptive. I've had a week to think about you. I've gotten pretty good at guessing what's going on in your head. I could hear the smile in his voice, easy, warm, nothing forced about it. Come tell me in person anyway. I want to actually see your face when you tell me. I walked down the hall and found him sitting on his bed, phone still in his hand like he hadn't quite processed that the call had ended. And when I told him again, out loud, standing in his doorway instead of hiding behind a phone screen, something in his expression opened all the way, unguarded in a way I hadn't seen from him yet. I'm proud of you, he said. For real, I know that's a small thing to say, but I mean it as big as it sounds small. Thanked you for not making it weird. When I told you the first time, you could have made it weird and you didn't. I could never make that weird. I've got my own stuff sitting right next to it, remember? That admission, his, sitting quiet in the room with mine, had been hovering over us all week, both of us circling it without quite landing on it, both of us maybe scared that namming it too soon would collapse something that felt too new and too fragile to survive being handled carelessly. But standing there in his doorway, something about the specific vulnerability of having just come out to my sister made the space between us feel less dangerous than it had a week earlier. Can I ask you something? I said, and it's okay if the answer's not ready yet. Ask. That thing you said about thinking about me, is that still true, or was that just a moment that happened because the whole night felt big? He was quiet for a second, considering it honestly instead of rushing to reassure me, which I appreciated more than I could have said out loud. It's still true. If anything, it's more true now than it was a week ago, which honestly kind of scares me, because a week ago I could still tell myself it was a one-time confession brought on by an emotional night. Now I don't have that excuse anymore. So what do we do with that? I don't know, I've never done this before, not the guy thing, not the roommate thing, not any of it. I don't have a script for this. He looked up at me from where he sat on the edge of his bed, and there was something disarmingly honest in his face, no performance in it at all. I just know I don't want to keep pretending I don't think about it. I'm tired of doing the math every time you walk into a room, trying to figure out if what I'm feeling is allowed to be there. It's allowed, I said, my voice coming out rougher than I meant it to. For what it's worth, it's allowed. Something shifted in the room then, some kind of quiet permission passing between us that neither of us needed to say out loud. He stood up, closing the distance slowly, like he was giving me every opportunity to step back if I wanted to, and I didn't step back, and for a second neither of us did anything except stand there, close enough to feel the nervous energy radiating off both of us in waves. I don't want to mess this up, he said quietly. I like our life, I like living with you, I don't want one bad decision to blow up something that already works. Then let's not make it a bad decision, I said. Let's just see, slowly, we don't have to solve the whole thing tonight. He laughed, quiet, relieved. You said the same thing a week ago, on the couch. It worked out okay the first time. We didn't kiss that night, if you're wondering, not because either of us didn't want to, but because it felt like the kind of thing that deserved to happen when it happened naturally, not because we talked ourselves into a moment that needed to be filled. That came a few weeks later, on an ordinary Tuesday, over something as unremarkable as him teaching me his mom's pasta sauce recipe for the second time because I'd apparently still been getting it wrong. Both of us laughing about flour on my shirt, and then not laughing, both of us just looking at each other in a kitchen that smelled like garlic and basil. And it happened the way the best things seem to happen, quietly, without ceremony, exactly when it was supposed to. I think about that video sometimes, the one I got caught watching, the stranger on my laptop screen talking calmly about a door he'd finally walked through. I never did find out his whole story, whether things worked out the way he hoped, whether the roommate he talked about stayed in his life the way mine did in mine. I like to think it did. I like to think somewhere out there is a guy who has no idea that his ordinary honest video, watched late at night by a stranger who wasn't ready to say anything out loud yet, ended up being the small crack of light that let two people in an apartment 1,000 miles away finally see each other clearly. Theo and I still live together. That part never changed, even as everything underneath it did. Some nights we still argue about the dishes. Some nights I still make terrible coffee out of pure stubbornness and drink it anyway while he watches, unimpressed, from across the kitchen. And some nights when the apartment's quiet and the day's been long, I catch him looking at me the way he looked at me that first night on the couch, and I don't panic slam anything shut anymore. I just look back.